Evan Jaqua. Evan, I hope I got your name correctly.
Yeah, nobody gets it right the first time. It's Jaqua, Evan Jaqua.
Okay, Evan Jaqua. Okay, so today's guest is Evan Jaqua. Evan is an international business development specialist, entrepreneur, and founder of the Solutions Party, a movement focused on political reform, accountability, and creating systems designed to better service society. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. I've been looking
All
forward
right,
to
so
this
I would also
conversation.
like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Okay, shall I introduce myself now?
Yes.
Okay, my name, as you already announced, is Evan Jaqua. I've lived most of my life overseas. I lived in Japan many years and got my master's degree in computer science in Japan, then lived in China, and most recently have spent most of the last 20 years living in South America, in Peru. My field of specialization is information technology and aviation. But as you mentioned, I started what is called the Solutions Party. And the Solutions Party is, if you go to my website, www.solutionsparty.org, is really a collection of ideas that I have developed in collaboration with people around the world. After talking to people in all these different countries and in their languages, by the way, and there's what really struck me was the amazing amount of commonality that we all share, and the commonality not only of the desires that we have for the future, but of the problems that we are confronting, especially when it comes to politics and government. So that's the inspiration behind solutionsparty.org. And I can go into more detail about the fundamental ideas. And as you would like, whatever you'd like, we can talk about those. Or if there's any other topic related to that, we can talk about that too.
Okay, so you have worked internationally and experienced different cultures and systems.
Yes.
How did those experiences shape your views on government and society?
Well, let me just start by saying that I've lived in a communist country, in communist China, and saw some of the horrors of that. I've lived in South America and have seen terrible corruption. I've seen corruption in Japan and even in this country. And I think what the biggest thing that the common denominator to everything that I have seen, the lowest common denominator of everything I've seen is actually something that is quite common to all human beings. And I think I should mention a little bit about it because it's the fundamental basis of everything that I've upon which I've developed these ideas. And that is, let's talk about the very basic, the human brain. The human brain is a wonderful thing, but part of the problem with one of the defects of the human brain is the ease with which it can form addictions. We form addictions to drugs. People form addictions to alcohol, to gambling, to social media, to junk food. There's all sorts of things people get addicted to, but probably the most addictive thing of all is political power. People, once they have political power, they don't want to give it up. And this is the fundamental problem with our politics in the United States and with pretty much politics everywhere, that once people get power, they become addicted to it and they don't want to give it up. Now, if you've ever known anybody with an addiction, you know that addiction can completely change them. And that's what happens with our politicians. The addiction starts becoming the priority. They want to stay in power and they will do everything they have to, whether it's lying or cheating or whatever. And this is why we have so many lying politicians, is because truth is of zero significance when they are trying to satisfy their addiction to power. This is why the most fundamental idea behind the Solutions Party is let's end re-election. Let's make it so that it becomes impossible to become addicted to power. And just as an analogy, Darlington, if I were a doctor and I had to give you a highly addictive medication, well, what would be the way I would give you that? I would prescribe that to you to help ensure that you don't get addicted. Well, I would give you small portions spread apart. That's exactly how political power has to be allocated. Small one-time portions spread apart. So I would say, to answer your question, to sum it up, is that my experiences have allowed me to see the commonality that people around the world are struggling with when it comes to our politics and government.
All right, thank you so much, Ivan. So one of your proposals is eliminating re-election, which I totally agree with.
Uh-huh.
Why do you believe the current re-election system creates problems? And what would a better system look like?
Okay, well, for one thing, the fundamental thing that we must remember is that all of our problems really come down to our politicians, because it is our politicians in whom we entrust the sacred power of the people. And they are supposed to be responsible and use that sacred power to make life better for all of us. But instead of that, they use their power to stay in office and to serve the special interests and the powerful people that help keep them in power. And so this is, again, this is a fundamental problem that all humans have. So the first reform that we must do is to eliminate re-election. And basically the message to anybody who gets elected to office is you have one chance to make a difference. You have one chance to make your mark on history. So do the best, do your best. You're not going to need to spend time working on your re-election campaign. For example, in the United States, politicians typically spend 50% of their time just raising money for their next political campaign or going to political rallies. So that's reform number one. Reform number two is we have to really rethink the whole notion of political parties. George Washington warned against political parties, and with good reason, because they become tribal and they become power hungry, and holding on to power and acquiring power becomes their priority. A political party should just be sort of a big tent under which people of similar ideas and beliefs can organize and present candidates accordingly. But instead of that, over time, political parties become vicious, tribal, and very greedy when it comes to power. So that's another reform that we must implement, that political parties, they exist temporarily to act as a big tent under which people of similar ideas and beliefs can organize. But after a certain period, they have to be shut down. They have to be what we say in English, sunsetted. The problems in our society are complex and multifaceted, are complex, and that's why they require multiple and multifaceted solutions. So political reform means eliminating re-election. It means reforming our political parties. And it also means, very critically, reforming our journalism to make our journalism trustworthy again. Because when our journalism isn't trustworthy, politicians will take advantage of that to control the narrative. So those are three fundamental ideas. There are more things that we need to do to make our democracy and our government more efficient. And I've tried to outline those in solutionsparty.org. But those are probably the three starting points.
All right, Ivan, thank you so much. So, moving on, you believe
Okay.
journalism needs reform as well. What changes do you think are necessary to rebuild trust between the media and the public?
Okay, let me just start off by saying, why is journalism so untrusted or mistrusted now? And let's think about in the old days, if you wanted to start a newspaper, for example, you had to buy the printing presses, you had to hire reporters, you had to have an advertising department, you had to have a way to distribute the newspapers. It was a huge investment. The same with starting a news channel syndicate, whether it be radio or television. Those were huge investments. But now, anybody with a laptop and a web page can start a quote unquote news channel. What is that? Why is that? What are the implications of that, the ramifications of that? It means that news, the traditional business model of news has collapsed. And in its place, what we're seeing is that quote unquote news channels are now more in the infotainment industry. They're basically entertainment channels that they basically seek to provide entertainment, misinformation with the idea of stoking people's emotions. It's very focused on emotion manipulation. So our news channels are no longer reliable sources of facts anymore, which is terrible. We have to understand that the traditional business model of news no longer functions. So in order to get our journalism widely trusted again, what I have proposed is that we certify our journalists, number one. So if you study journalism at a university, you get your degree, you will automatically be certified. In addition to that, we grade our journalists and our news organizations based on the quality of their articles, based on the neutrality of the articles, based on their fact checking, based on the relevance of their articles. And so you get a certificate, which is like, it says you're a certified journalist. But in addition to that, you get a grade, and that grade can be generated through a whole series of, for example, AI programs, because you get a combination of
All right,
AI
Evan,
programs
thank
and
you so
people who
much.
are
So my next
professional
question for you is
evaluators,
this.
and you
What are your
take
ideas
all
for
their different scores and you
judicial reform?
average them to get a
And what
grade.
problems do you
Now,
believe exist in the current systems?
what's that? I'm sorry. You said something in there I didn't quite get.
I said, what are your ideas for judicial reform? And what problems do you believe
Oh,
exist in the current systems?
Oh,
Yes.
okay. One of the biggest problems with the judiciary. One of the biggest problems with the judiciary is that our politicians have crafted the judiciary to be basically extensions of the political parties. For example, our Supreme Court, if you look at all the parade of 6-3 decisions, you have the Republican judges and you have the Democrat judges. Now, that's a huge problem because when people think that judges are just extensions of the political parties, they have no faith in our judges. And that's a terrible thing for our democracy. When judges make decisions, they have to be respected, they have to be believed. So we have to reform the whole process of how judges are nominated. Our politicians should be working to take partisanship out of the judiciary. And so I have made a few recommendations about how to do that. But in addition to that, right now the Supreme Court justices are given a lifetime appointment. Let's make that not a lifetime. Let's make that 16 years. After 16 years, they have to move on. And when it comes to the appeals courts, these lower level courts, let's move the judges around because right now in too many cases, certain judges or appeal courts in certain areas are associated with the political parties. Like, for example, the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco is considered to be a very liberal, Democrat leading circuit or appeals court. The one in New Orleans, the Fifth Circuit Court, is considered to be a Republican-friendly court. Let's move the judges around every 4 years so that we can disassociate any particular court with a politician or with a political party. So I think that's the way that we would reform journalism. Our judiciary is to make it independent of partisan politics.
All right, Evan. So moving on, what do you believe is the true source of American greatness? And how can the country reconnect with those principles?
The true source of our greatness in our country has always been the decency and the civility with which we treat each other. People disagree. People will always disagree. The key point is, how do you handle those disagreements? In the old days, when people disagreed, well, they sharpened the spears and they sharpened the swords and they went at it, and the best band of brawlers won. But over time, we came to realize that the best way to solve our disagreements is to have civil exchanges of ideas, treat each other with decency. That's number one. Number two, let's reaffirm our commitment to principles. Now, what do I mean when I say principles? Well, you may know there's a principle of equality under the law, and that means that you treat everybody exactly the same, and you don't treat somebody with one skin color different from a person, with another skin color, or you don't treat somebody. The law it's not supposed to treat somebody who has one religion different than they treat the other. Equality under the law means that justice is blind. You don't look at the characteristics of the perpetrators and the victims when you make judicial decisions or when you apply the law. But that principle has to apply in general in all of our lives. In other words, right now what we have a terrible lack of principles, which means that if Donald Trump does something, his followers are going to be all in favor of it. But if somebody else were to do the same thing, they would be against it. In other words, you just switch the names and they completely change their opinion. And that works both ways, by the way. Biden could have done something and his supporters would have been all in favor. But if Donald Trump had done the exact same thing, they would have been against it. We have to approach things based on principles and ideas and not based on characteristics, whether they be political characteristics, physical characteristics, religious characteristics. We have to focus on the ideas, and we have to, in the case of law enforcement or any sort of thing involving the judiciary, where we focus exclusively on the matters at hand, not the characteristics of the people involved. And that's, by the way, how you make a great country. When people act upon principle and they act with civility and decency. And that has always been the source of our greatness. Not that we've always been perfect at that, but we need to make a recommitment to being a country based on principles.
All right, Evan, thank you so much. So here is my final question for you. For someone listening who feels frustrated with politics and believes change is impossible, what would you say to them?
I would say this: never give up hope, because if you give up hope, then there is no hope. I would also recommend this. We all feel angry about the current situation of things, but when it comes to anger, remember the 3 C's. Number 1, control your anger, because out of control anger never solves anything. Number 2, convert your anger into ideas. Number 3, channel those ideas into action. So control your anger, convert that anger into ideas, and then channel your ideas into action. That's how you bring about change. And the other thing is to always remember that the real enemies in society are not your fellow citizens. The real enemies are the ones who have the power and who are trying to take power away from the people. And this could be politicians and working with special interests who are in cahoots, who are working together to take power away from the people and accumulate it for themselves. So let's remember that the problem really comes down to our politicians. And if we focus on reforming our politics and encouraging our politicians to work for the general interest and not for the special interest, then things can change. And that's what I've tried to propose in all of my all the different proposals on solutionsparty.org.
Right, Evan, so for those who would like to connect with you and learn more about your work, how can they do that?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.solutionsparty.org. And there are a whole bunch of ideas presented there. I would love your feedback. You can reach me at info@solutionsparty.org. And I'm also on X a lot at _solutionsparty. Now, I want to emphasize that I would love to hear your feedback on my ideas, suggestions. Everything is on the table. And if you would like to start a solutions party in your part of the world, let's work together and make that happen. Let's work together with other people who want to make change and who believe that a better world is possible, because a better world is possible. The first step is believing it. The next step is acting on it. So please, if you are interested, please contact me at info@solutionsparty.org. And please spend a little time on the website. There are lots of different proposals there. And I would love to hear your feedback on those and make those proposals even better.
Right, Evan, thank you so much. I also want to thank all my audience for taking out their time to be here today. You guys are the reason why we always do this. Thank you so much, Evan, and do have a wonderful day ahead.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate this. Hope we can talk again soon.
Okay, definitely.